Cybersecurity is the top priority in India's digital health landscape in today's world. And understanding how to protect against cyber threat is very, very essential nowadays. We are fortunate to have with us Miss Esther Christopher, IT Security Evangelist at ManageEngine, who will share her invaluable expertise on how to safeguard against cyber attacks in healthcare. This presentation promises to be very, very essential, very important, because we need to have the guide which is offering practical strategies and insight to bolster our defenses against cyber threats. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Esther Christopher on the stage.
So, my name's Esther, and I work with ManageEngine in the IT security department. And it was really interesting to hear from a lot of you guys on how India's innovated the digital side of healthcare. So, and even I actually learned a lot from all of you. This part of the presentation will focus more on the threats that the industry can have and how, as an institution or an industry, we can actually protect ourselves from emerging threats like these. So, at ManageEngine, we have IT management tools, end-to-end management basically. So anything that goes from endpoint security, a SIM solution, anything that protects your IT environment, and that is what we're going to talk about in this particular session. So I just thought we'll start with a statistic on cyber attacks on healthcare sector. So this is a pretty recent statistic which says that especially on healthcare sector, there's around 60% of organizations that get hit by cyber attacks every single year. So, of course, it is attacks are something that not just confined to one particular industry. They are always targeting different sectors, but we all know how information in healthcare industry is very valuable, and also how the data that you deal with is very sensitive. So this makes healthcare industry prone to cyber attacks from attackers and hackers. So that's what we see in this statistic. And also the type of threats, if you look at it, the major ones are, I'm sure all of you have already heard of it, called ransomware, phishing, and malware attacks. So these are some very common attacks that can be targeted for the healthcare industry. But I thought we can focus on emerging cyber threats rather than talking about the usual and common threats that occur in the industry. So this is again part of the same article that I was reading, where a lot of the information that gets stolen ends up on the dark web. And again, this is a term that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It is something that is not very available publicly for us to monitor, but that is where a lot of stolen data or stolen information ends up for other attackers to actually exploit. So when it comes to identity trade in the dark web, how exactly would organizations like us actually kind of have a defense against threats like this, right? Because it's very unusual and also can be very complex as well. So that's where we can go into monitoring the dark web itself. As you can see here, there's the first layer of it, which is surface web, which is where we actually access all the public information, right? Google and anything that we search is going to be shown on that surface web, which is very accessible. But if you look at the last layer there, that is exactly where we will not be able to access information on it that easily. As you can see, you'll need a very specialized software or a browser called Tor just to access dark web itself. So how exactly can we monitor something that's happening in another layer, in the last layer of information, you know, with the tools that we have today? So that is exactly why we at ManageEngine have something that is newly come up with when we monitor dark web for threats like these. So why exactly we do it? Basically, for all cyber threats, there is a reactive approach. Something happens and then you maybe detect it and then respond to a threat like that. Maybe it's a ransomware, maybe it's a phishing attack, or a malware that's found in one of your systems. So it's mostly always reactive, whereas in this particular capability, what we thought was we'll look at it from a proactive approach. So basically, we can use dark web monitoring to maybe take a proactive security approach where any information that is leaked in the dark web, when you have that information, it's important that whether it's actually exploited in a data breach or not, when you have that sort of a data with you, it's easy to prevent attacks rather than reacting to something that's happened. So basically, it's an early warning of cyber threats rather than an attack that's already exploited the data that you have. So for that, of course, ManageEngine SIM solution is something that will work to provide that visibility into dark web data, look for any information that's actually been exploited in the dark web, so that we can actually have that data to prevent an attack or a data breach from actually happening in your healthcare institution. So this, until now, I've talked about a proactive approach. There's also threats that can come from within an organization. So as we can see on this statistics from this report, it shows that around 20% of cyber attacks actually happen from within an organization, and these are called insider threats. So it doesn't always have to be an insider actually with malicious intentions carrying out an attack on the organization. It can also be someone who's negligent or doesn't follow proper protocols or the security practices that you have in your organization, and might actually end up leaking some sensitive information and so on. So any of this can come under or come within the view of an insider threat. But nevertheless, it is still a very, very important type of cyber threat that gets overlooked very easily. So for that, what solution can you actually have in place? So with ManageEngine, what we do is that we monitor the user's behavior. So let's say that I am, logging in. I usually log in at a normal work hour, like 9 to 5. And on one particular day, I am actually logging in at around 1 a.m., which is not very unusual if you think about it, but it still is very different for my work day, right? So I usually work at 9 to 5, from 9 to 5, but on that particular day, I am logging in at 1 a.m. So after that, what happens is I access some files that I'm not supposed to access. So let's say I am from the marketing department, but I am accessing some files that are only related to the finance department or sales or some other department that I'm actually not supposed to. So that is again going to be raising a red flag. And let's assume that after I access these files, I am actually copying them to an USB drive, or I am uploading them to my own, let's say, Google Drive or any of the other applications. So if you look at it, it's very separate actions that this one person is doing. But on the whole, if you monitor that one person's actions and how it is very different behavior for that one employee, you can actually see that there is a threat or a cyber threat that's actually going to take place. So when you monitor an employee's behavior that way, it's easy for us to kind of create a timeline of everything that's happening right from the start. And that's how we can gain visibility into insider threats. So the capability or the concept that we use here is user and entity behavior analytics, which is also called as UEBA. And again, that's one of ManageEngine's solutions as well. So I spoke about what can happen on data that we have on premises, but there's also cloud, right, which is also very vulnerable to cyber attacks. So especially since now that everything is all organizations use the cloud for storing data, for processing it, which is just going to make it that much more vulnerable to cyber threats. So in that way, what kind of mechanisms can organizations use to protect against attacks like these? There is something called CASB, which is Cloud Access Security Broker. So it's kind of going back to the example that I spoke about before of how an employee actually accesses customer data or some sensitive data and then uploads them into their personal Google Drive, or even if they upload it to a different SaaS application that you actually don't use in your organization, that can also lead to a data breach as well. So it doesn't always have to be an intentional, malicious person trying to sabotage the institution, or rather a very negligent person who's handling this sensitive, let's say, patient information or data, and actually creating a breach or a leak by using that data. So for all of these scenarios, which is very important that you monitor these type of actions in order to prevent data leaks like that, we use CASB for this. So basically what it will do is provide the visibility into different applications that you use and classify them according to the different risks as well. Let's say you have some policies in your organization and you only use certain applications. If they are using something different or a third-party application, you will have that visibility. And also identify which person is accessing which application as well, in order to to help your security teams to actually get to the source of the threat and easily identify what went wrong, and also protecting against the threats that we spoke about until now, right? Malware, ransomware, that can affect your institution. And the last one is protecting against exfiltrating that data. So what CASP will do is, if there is a particular person who's uploading sensitive information or information that they're not supposed to access onto their personal account or exfiltrating through an external USB. So that sort of a thing, you will actually be able to track that and prevent something like that from happening as well. So this is some of the mechanisms that a SIM or a security solution should have in your organization. It starts from, visibility into different network devices, your workstations, and from there it goes to security analytics. What information do we get from, that information that we've gathered? What can we make out of it? And from there it goes to detecting the different security threats that can happen on those particular devices, and also moving on to protecting data on the cloud and on-premises as well. For that, there's also very nuanced concepts under that as well, like what data should be classified as sensitive, and how do we discover data itself, and what are the types of files that we analyze. So all of that will come under data security. And the last part of it is managing incidents when they happen. So any security breach or any security threat that has actually happened in your institution, how do you actually manage it with a SIM solution? So all of this makes up for having a very comprehensive security tool that is going to not only prevent attacks from happening, but also, in case they happen, respond to them, detect them first, because that is more important. As soon as you detect presence of a threat in your network, it's easier to contain the damage that it can cause, and also respond to them in a very timely manner as well. So all of this put together, you'll have a very comprehensive security strategy in your organization. And that brings me to the end of this session. Thank you all for listening.